I remember the summer of '52 like a brand burned into my mind. Kansas was dry that year, real dry. The kind of dry where the dirt turns white and the air tastes like copper. And you start to wonder if God forgot this part of the map altogether. The radio said it was just another drought season, but that didn't explain the way the ground cracked open like old skin, or the way the wheat whispered when there was no wind. Back then, I worked as a surveyor for the county. Not much to it. Measuring land that nobody wanted anymore, keeping records for men who'd left their farms to rot. I spent my days walking empty fields with a clipboard and a compass, and my nights in a rented house on the edge of Salina. The walls were thin, the floorboards uneven, and when the wind came from the west, it pushed sand through the cracks under the door. I didn't mind the solitude. The war had made me tired of people, their noise, their excuses, their small talk. I'd seen enough men lie to themselves to last me a lifetime. Out there in the open, the silence was honest. That summer, the heat came early. By June, the sky had gone pale and washed out, like it had been left too long in the sun. Cattle died in the shade, birds vanished from the trees, and every breath felt like drawing fire into your lungs. The air was so still it made your ears ring. I started seeing strange things out on the horizon. Tricks of light, I thought. Heat shimmer that looked like figures, shapes, shadows that shouldn't have been there. Sometimes I'd stop my truck, lean on the hood, and stare until my eyes hurt. Most of the time, the mirages would vanish once I blinked. But one didn't. It was early June when I saw him for the first time. I was driving a dirt road between Salina and Abilene, heading out to check a boundary line by an old abandoned field. The ground there hadn't seen a plow in years. The soil was brittle, gray, and dead. I parked the truck, stepped out, and saw him standing in the middle of it. At first, I thought it was a scarecrow. The figure was still, motionless, too dark against the glare of the wheat stubble. But as I shaded my eyes, I saw the glint of something. Maybe a cufflink, maybe just light catching on a sleeve. He was dressed in black, a full suit, jacket, tie, and a hat pulled low over his eyes. A damn fool outfit for a day like that. He stood maybe 300 yards away. Didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even seem to breathe. I waited, thinking maybe he was another surveyor or a farmer checking his property. But no truck, no tractor, no dust trail led to where he was standing. Just him and the baked ground beneath his feet. After a minute or two, I called out. Nothing. The sound got swallowed by the heat. I turned back to grab my binoculars from the cab. When I looked again, he was gone. Just gone. I remember standing there a while longer, trying to make sense of it. The only thing left was a dark patch in the field, a strange circular burn in the grass, like someone had held a magnifying glass over the earth and let the sun do its work. I chalked it up to heat stroke and drove home. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of rye, listening to the radio. There was a preacher on one of the local stations, ranting about judgment and fire, the kind of man who'd turn a thunderstorm into a sermon. I turned it off. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was thick, pressing against the windows like the air itself was listening. Around midnight, I heard it for the first time. A low hum, faint, almost mechanical. I thought maybe it was a plane somewhere far off, but it didn't fade. It just sat there in the air, steady and mean. When I went outside, the sky was clear. No planes, no wind, just the stars hanging low and close, and the smell of smoke somewhere far off. By morning, I found black dust on my porch, fine, weightless, like the remains of something burned clean. I didn't think much of it. Kansas burns all the time. Brush fires, lightning strikes, farmers clearing stubble. Still, something about it stuck with me. 2 days later, I saw the man again. Same field,
Same black suit, same stillness. Only this time he was closer, maybe 100 yards off. And when I looked through the binoculars, I swear he was staring right at me. I couldn't see his face, not clearly, but I knew he was looking. The strangest thing was the air around him. It shimmered, like heat rising from asphalt, but heavier, darker, almost as if the world bent slightly where he stood. When I drove toward him, the truck started to shake. The engine coughed, sputtered, died. I sat there with my hand on the key, listening to the ticking metal as it cooled. When I looked up again, he was gone. I walked out into the field. The ground was soft, unnaturally so, like something had loosened it from below. There were footprints, deep ones, perfectly round at the heel, burned black at the edges. The smell was unmistakable. Char. By the time I got back to town, the sheriff had already heard stories. Someone had found a burnt patch of earth near the grain elevator, another by the rail tracks north of town. Each one perfectly circular, each one with no source of ignition. He said lightning, though the sky had been clear for weeks. That night, the wind shifted. It came from the west, and with it came the smell. Burnt wheat, hot metal, and something else. Something older. I started waking up at odd hours, always the same time, 3:17 a.m. The hum would be there, faint but clear. I'd go outside, scan the fields with my flashlight, see nothing but dust and wire fences, and yet I could feel it, the same pressure in the air I'd felt out in that field, like the world was holding its breath. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, until the fire started. Small at first, a patch of pasture here, a strip of stubble there, always circular, always clean. The fire never spread, never scorched past its edge. The locals started whispering, talking about signs, omens, bad spirits. I tried to be the rational one. I'd spent my life dealing with lines, measurements, facts. But one night I pulled out the county map and marked every place the fires had appeared. They formed a line, perfectly straight, and that line ended right where I'd seen the man.
The fires didn't spread, but they didn't stop either. By late June, there were 9 of them, each one a perfect circle, each one in a line stretching west to east. I drove that line myself, starting at the farthest point out near Brookville and following it all the way toward the Smoky Hill River. And I'll tell you this, standing there, map in hand, you could feel it, like the air was charged, like the dirt was waiting for something. The thing that bothered me most wasn't the fires, it was what came after them. The grass in those burned patches didn't grow back, not a single blade. You could throw seed, pour water. Hell, I saw one farmer plow it all up and start again, and still nothing. The ground was just dead. People started talking in town. A waitress at the diner said she'd seen a man walking down Highway 81 at night, dressed in black, no car, no light, just walking slow with his head down. Someone else swore they saw him standing by the church fence right after midnight, staring at the steeple. I didn't believe them, not yet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was connected to the land somehow. Like wherever he stood, the ground gave up. I stopped by the courthouse one morning to check the old land records. The clerk, an old man named Henley, brought me the ledgers from the 30s, yellow pages, half-faded ink. Most of the fields where the fires appeared had once belonged to the same family, the Whitakers. They were farmers, lost their place during the Dust Bowl. Whole family disappeared in 37. No one knew where they went. Some said they moved west to California. Others said they just vanished. Their property had been abandoned ever since. And right in the middle of that property line, that's where I'd seen him. That night, the wind picked up, the kind that comes out of nowhere and makes the trees groan. The radio cut in and out, voices flickering through static, preachers, weather reports, faint music from some faraway station. I left it on for company, but sometime after midnight, the signal went dead. I remember sitting there, in that silence, staring out the window at the fields. The moonlight turned everything silver, the fences, the dirt, the dead grass. And then I saw it. A faint glow out past the tree line. Not fire, it wasn't moving, not flickering, just a steady, dull light like a lantern held too long. I should have stayed inside, but I didn't. I took the flashlight and drove out, the tires kicking dust the whole way. The glow faded as I got closer. By the time I reached the field, it was gone. But he was there, standing in the same place I'd seen him before, still, silent, watching. I turned off the engine. The hum was there again, deep, electric, like the vibration of the earth itself. I stepped out, shining the light toward him. The beam hit his suit and stopped cold, like it was swallowed by smoke. The closer I got, the quieter everything became. No wind, no crickets, even the air seemed to thin out. My boots sank into the dirt, soft like ashes. And then, without thinking, I said something. Not out loud exactly. It was more like the thought left my head before I could catch it. I thought, "What are you doing here?" And I swear to God, the hum changed. It rose like a breath drawn in through 1,000 mouths. Then, silence. I blinked, and he was gone. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember sleeping. But the next morning, I woke to find black soot under my fingernails and a smell in my house that I'll never forget. Burnt wheat and old metal. For the next few days, I stayed busy. Paperwork, measurements, anything to keep my mind from circling back. But the hum followed me. Sometimes I'd hear it in the truck, faint through the engine. Sometimes in the radio, hidden under the music. Once I heard it in the walls, like something alive was moving behind the plaster. Then, one afternoon, I went back to the field. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I'd imagined it all. Maybe I wanted to prove something to myself. The field was empty. The soil was blackened in patches, as if fire had rolled through and stopped halfway. The wind was blowing from the north, dry and sharp, and in it I could hear faint whispers. Not words, just shapes of sound. That's when I found the barn. It was half collapsed, hidden behind a stand of dead trees. The sign above the door was so faded you could barely read it, but I could still make out the name, Whitaker. Inside, the air was thick with dust. Old farming tools leaned against the walls, rusted plows, broken rakes, a wheelbarrow half full of soot. I took a few steps in and felt the floor creak beneath me. Then I saw them. Rows of figures, standing upright in the gloom. At first I thought they were scarecrows, bundles of straw dressed in old clothes. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized they were mannequins. Dozens of them, burned, blackened, their faces blistered smooth. Each one wore a hat. I stepped closer. The air smelled like something had died there a long time ago. On the brim of one of the hats, I saw letters burned into the leather, H. Whitaker. The next had another name, and another. I counted 13 before I stopped. Then I found one with my name on it. Not carved, not stitched, burned into the leather from the inside out. The edges still warm to the touch. That's when the hum started again. Louder this time. It filled the barn, vibrating the floorboards, rattling the nails in the walls. I backed toward the door, but before I could reach it,
The mannequins began to move. Not much, just a shift, a lean, like something beneath them was breathing. I ran. Outside, the air was thick and red. The sun was setting, but it didn't look right. It was bigger, heavier, like it was sitting too low in the sky. The wind had picked up again, swirling dust around me. When I looked back, the barn was gone. Just an empty field. I drove until the gas ran out, and even then I kept walking. I don't sleep that night. I don't think I even blinked. By morning, I was 50 miles south, somewhere near the Oklahoma line. I found a payphone outside a diner, called the sheriff's office, and told them what I'd seen. They said they'd send someone to check. But when they got there was nothing. No barn, no mannequins, no burned soil. Just prairie grass and silence. That's when I stopped talking about it.
I didn't talk about it for years. I left Salina the following spring, packed what I had into the back of a Chevy, and drove north until the plains turned into forests. Found work where I could, small jobs, odd contracts, enough to keep me fed and forgetful. But the thing about forgetting is, it's not something you do. It's something that happens to you, slowly, when the world allows it. And the world never allowed me. Everywhere I went, something small followed. Not the man himself, no, just his echoes. The hum, the smell of burnt grass, a shadow across the sky that never quite matched the clouds. For a while, I thought it was all in my head. Trauma, they'd call it now. The war, the isolation, the heat. But I knew better. I'd spent half my life drawing lines, property lines, roads, borders. I knew when something crossed over into where it didn't belong. And whatever that thing was, it crossed long ago. I stayed in Minnesota for a few years. The cold helped. Winter kept the air clean, quiet. Sometimes I'd go whole weeks without thinking about Kansas. Then one night in '59, I heard it again. That low, steady hum. Faint, but too real to be memory. It came from the forest behind the cabin I was renting. I followed it out of habit more than courage. The snow was deep, and the trees were black against the moonlight. The sound grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat through the ground. I came to a clearing. The snow there had melted, a perfect circle of bare earth steaming in the night air. And standing in the middle of it was a figure. Same shape, same stillness, black suit, hat low. I didn't move. I couldn't. My breath fogged in front of me, and the hum grew until I could feel it in my teeth. I thought about calling out, but something in me knew not to. Instead, I whispered, not to him, not even to the air, but to myself. I left you behind. And then I heard it, my own voice, but not coming from me, from somewhere out in that circle. The same words said back, slow and hollow. I left you behind. The hum stopped. When I looked again, the snow was untouched. The clearing was gone. I walked back to the cabin and poured a drink. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I sat there until morning, staring at nothing, listening to the silence fill itself back in. The next day, I packed and left again. I didn't care where. I just drove. South, west, anywhere that wasn't north. Over the years, I learned to live with it. The smell of smoke became like an old scar. It flares up when the weather changes. The hum comes and goes. Sometimes I hear it in the engine of a passing train. Sometimes in the wiring of old houses. You learn to tell yourself lies to keep breathing. But every lie costs you something. In the summer of '72, I went back to Kansas. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted to prove he was gone. Maybe I wanted to see if anything of me was still left there. The town had changed.
Highways, new gas stations, bright signs. But the land was the same. Empty, heavy, waiting. I drove the old roads until I found the place. The field, the one that used to belong to the Whitakers. It was wild now, grown over with dry brush and thorn. The soil was cracked open in wide, crooked lines. But I knew it the moment I saw it. The shape of the hills, the way the horizon leaned, it was all still there. I walked out to the middle, boots sinking in the dust. The sun hung low, burning red. I stood there and waited. Nothing happened. No hum, no man, no smoke. Just the sound of wind dragging itself through dead stalks. For a while, I thought that was peace. I almost laughed at how small it felt, how simple. Then I looked down. At my feet was a black circle, a perfect ring of burnt soil, fresh, too fresh, and there, in the center of it, was a footprint. Not mine. I don't remember driving back. I don't remember sleeping. The next clear thing I remember is standing in front of a mirror, days later, looking at my reflection. And that's when I saw it. A burn mark on my neck. Round like the edge of a coin. Small at first, but each day it spread, darker, deeper, as if something beneath the skin was smoldering. I tried to wash it off, to cover it, to ignore it, but I could feel it pulse faintly whenever I heard that hum again. I know, that he wasn't a man at all, not anymore. Maybe he never was. Maybe he was something the land made to remember. Something born from all that burned and was forgotten. I spent years trying to put words to it, but words don't fit things like that. They shrink them, make them smaller than they are. He wasn't evil. He wasn't merciful. He just was. And I think I understand now what he was watching. It wasn't the fields. It wasn't the barns, or the people, or even the fire. It was us. He was waiting for us to burn ourselves out. And when we did, when we left the land empty, silent, stripped of everything that grew, that's when he appeared. Not to punish, not to haunt, just to bear witness. The Whitakers were the first. Maybe they saw what I saw. Maybe they tried to stop it. Maybe they became part of it. I don't know. But their land stayed dead long after they were gone. Now I'm old. My hands don't work the way they used to. My voice cracks when the air gets too dry. I live far from there, somewhere the grass still grows and the winters come early. But some nights, when the power flickers or the wind smells like dust, I hear it again. That low, steady hum. It creeps up through the floorboards, settles in the walls. The same rhythm as breathing. And when it stops, I know he's near. Sometimes I wake up and see smoke rising outside the window. Just a thin line, disappearing into the sky. Sometimes I go out to the porch, and there he is, standing at the edge of the field, hat low, still as ever. I don't run anymore. I just watch, because maybe that's what he wants. Maybe that's what all of this was ever about. Not fear, not punishment, just watching, waiting. I used to think he was watching the fields burn, but now I understand. He was watching me, and now I think I'm watching him back.
Thank you for listening. New day, new story. Come back tomorrow. We'll keep the light on just long enough for you to find the next one.